Welcome to episode 5 of my enrolled agent career. I am your host, Timalyn Bowens, America's favorite EA. And in today's episode, I actually have one of those special guests that I've been promising you. So, if you're new to the podcast, in the previous episodes, I've explained what an enrolled agent is, how to become an enrolled agent, and I've shared part of my story of how I became an enrolled agent, studied for the exam, started my firm. But in today's episode, I'm going to bring on one of my fellow EAs to share her story as well. Social media is amazing when it comes to networking. Although we still need to meet people in real life, I'm grateful for some of the people I've had the opportunity to add to my network. So, the guest for today is one of those people that I've been able to add. Not only is she an enrolled agent, she's also a serial entrepreneur. She can relate to the path of being a mom and a wife, and she works in the representation space, which you all know by now. I believe all enrolled agents should. So, with no further ado, please welcome my guest for episode 5, Jessica Smith.
Hello. Thank you for having me on the podcast today.
I'm excited to have you, Jessica. As we talked offline, you know, when you're connected with people online, sometimes you feel like you know them, but I realize I don't know all of your EA story. So I am very grateful for you to be on here today to share that with us.
Very excited as well.
So, the first question I have for you, because a lot of people ask me or be concerned about their background when it comes to their interest in becoming an EA. When did you become an enrolled agent and how did you find out about the designation?
So I went to undergrad to pursue my degree in accounting, and the plan for all of like what I could think of, like, oh, I want to be this, I want to be this, was I want to be a CPA. Like, I want to be a CPA. I'm a second generation tax accountant. My dad was a practicing tax attorney in California where we grew up. And I remember most of the like jobs that I was drawn to had some kind of like accounting function. I did like cashiering and, other like customer service stuff. So I was already in kind of that industry a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I really wanted to be a CPA. So that was kind of the path that I was going for. And then when I was in school, one of my professors talked about the enrolled agent designation, and I completely wrote it off. I was like, I do not want to do that. That sounds awful. Tax was not like the first area of the industry that I was like, oh, that's where I want to be. I silly thought that I was going to be like an internal auditor because I was like, this sounds so exciting. And now that I'm really focused and dialed in on tax, I can't even imagine doing internal auditing. So I graduated from college and was, again, still going to pursue the CPA, but I was having difficulty getting a job as a just, with my undergrad in accounting. And most of, like, a lot of people struggle right out of school to get any kind of job in public accounting because they want a ton of experience. So I decided to start my own bookkeeping practice. And I did like very basic entry level kind of tax prep. And then my dad was like, you should probably consider the EA. I think that'd be a good fit for you. I took probably 6 months or so to like convince myself and to study for it. And I officially became an EA in January of 2014 and didn't have any plans to do representation. It was just, I thought I needed to have some kind of like license to just get more exposure, I guess, to like the tax prep world.
Mm-hmm.
And then in September of 2014, I was lucky enough to get a job at a tax law firm. And then that's where I kind of really got into and learned more about like what representation was, because they were high volume representation only. They did a lot of like criminal cases. They did a lot of mainly like tax pro criminal cases, which was super exciting.
Oh, wow.
And that just like opened my eyes to a totally different side of the industry. So really, like within that first year of the law firm, CPA was out, EA was in. I was in 100%, and it has been a very good move for me because I've been able to make that I've leveraged that credential so much now in my career.
So I'm going to go back a little bit to something you mentioned with your professor because you had exposure to the EA license before I did. I didn't know what it was in college, and it sounds like we were in college somewhere to the same
Yeah.
time. I didn't find out until after I graduated. I had worked 3 years in public accounting, and I was like, the CPA exam at the time, and don't come for me, people. I know the structure of the exam has been changed now. But back then, I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to take the CPA exam, like, if that's not what I want to do. Initially, I thought I wanted to do an audit, went to this CPA firm, fell in love with tax, tax law, all things tax. But then I was sad I didn't find out about the EA credential probably until like September of 2014. What was it for you that made you think like, I don't want to do anything tax related?
Well, I think it's because when I got into school, I found that the the internal auditing process was just super interesting to me. I was
Mhm.
like, I don't want to do tax, but I'm so good at it. Like all of my all scores, like if you talk about like the path like being paved for you, I didn't score poorly in any of my audit exams, but in comparison to the tax exams, like I was just performing so much better in tax. Like it was obvious that is what my brain really grasped onto and what
Mhm.
really just like I got excited about it. And I think that's what benefited me, especially when I started to learn more about what it really meant to be an enrolled agent and what that license is allowing me to do, and the representative authority was like super cool. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I get to help people get out of like these really sticky problems, and no two clients were exactly alike." Um, it was just a really like a really, really good fit for me. But I was hesitant because I was like, "Ew, tax." Right? I mean, you kind of get the I mean, my dad is super nerdy. Like, don't get me wrong. He's very much like your typical like very A type, has a a very dad jokey like sense of humor. Like he thinks he's really funny, but like out to a typical crowd, he'd probably be like, "Oh, that's really funny," right? So I've always known my dad to be that way, and the way that he interacted like with his job, like he was just very like type A nerdy kind of thing, and my personality was kind of different, and so I was like, "Maybe tax isn't the right fit for me." And I don't know why I thought audit would be a better fit because I was still gonna kind of be holed up in a cubicle potentially, um, not talking to people, right? Like, the very small introvert side of me was like, "Oh, that sounds great." But yeah, I did so well on all of the tax side of things, and when I was really you know, at least for me, what gravitated me towards the tax was just that I grasped the concepts well. And if you're going to pursue a career, ideally you want to not only like what you do, but you want to be good at it. And I was definitely really good at tax.
Gotcha. Yeah, I had something similar. Like I knew I wanted to be an accounting major, wanted to be a CPA, have my own firm. But then I always tell people there's like the joke within the business school, like the accounting students are the nerds, but then with the accounting students, like the tax people are the real nerds. And I was like, I don't want to do tax. But then
Mhm.
I fell in love and like it just makes sense. It's a puzzle. And then when I like learned about the representation side, like, oh, my life was made. So you kind of opened the door to a question that I was gonna ask. Um, because I always harp, I do feel like with the authority that the EA license gives tax professionals, that we should all walk in that authority and do representation. And I know
Mhm.
different strokes for different folks, right? For you, you mentioned what an EA is to you. Will you kind of speak to that? So, like for you, the EA designation, what is an EA? Because sometimes I see people, they're like, well, I want to show people I'm more proficient in tax preparations. I'm going to take the EA exam. And it's like, I mean, I guess because it's the highest credential you can get from the IRS, but
Mhm.
that's not how I see it. And maybe I'm just looking at it wrong. I don't know.
Well, I think that for me, because I got exposure at a tax law firm, which was really eye-opening because I think that a lot of people assume tax attorneys understand compliance and tax prep, which
They don't.
they don't. Like, compliance and tax prep and practicing tax law are not the same thing. And that
Mhm.
was very eye-opening for me in the law firm because I saw and got exposed to a totally different side of the industry. Yes, tax prep and compliance like comes into the mix a lot of the times, especially when you're talking about positions on tax returns. But so much of what I remember doing at the law firm was paralegal type work, right? Going through doing technical research, having to find authoritative sources to support a position we were taking in an audit. It's just a very different animal. And I do agree with you. A lot of people assume passing the EA exam and going that route is somehow going to make them a better tax preparer.
Yeah.
And to an extent, potentially, like, yes, the exam talks about different tax topics that you have to understand. You have to understand how tax returns work, right? How taxes are calculated and everything. But I don't see the enrolled agent really as like, oh, I'm now licensed or certified to do taxes, because that's just not what that is for. There's not currently a license recognized by any authoritative body that we're aware of that license tax prep. And
Mm.
so learning about like what representation really was and how different that career path has been for me was helpful. But yeah, compliance and tax law, they're related but totally different. It
I
can be
agree.
difficult for people to understand that until they're actually practicing it and they're doing legal research to
Mhm.
apply their train of thought or their decision making in a lot of different things.
Yeah, and that's an amazing experience that you had the opportunity to have as well. Like, I always tell people I'm grateful for that time at the CPA firm because 1, I didn't have to pay for my training, right? I got paid
Yes,
to
you got
learn
paid to learn. Yeah.
and get exposed to so many different things, but, like, listening to you, I'm like, "Man, if I would have had those 3 years to, like, learn representation because it is
Mhm.
completely different," like, that's amazing. Um, but I know and I want our listeners to have the opportunity to learn too, you didn't stay at that law firm. So after your time at the law firm, like what did you being an EA look like afterwards?
So I was really fortunate. The whole getting paid to learn thing, that is the ultimate hack. Like for this
Yes.
career, it is the hack. So if you are able to pay your dues 3 to 5 years at a firm that can actually give you that kind of training is going to be invaluable. I was very blessed. The firm that I was at, it was very high volume representation only. We didn't do compliance. Um, from a training perspective, I did get a lot of really good mentorship. I made some really good friends
Mhm.
with some amazing mentors over there. So that was a benefit to me. And also just my ability to make my job and then my job to support these other attorneys easier. I got really immersed into like, I need to really understand what I'm doing. I can't just willy nilly be like, oh, let me just take notes in this meeting and then never do the follow up or the follow through with like researching the information to make sure it's correct. And that really helped me take everything, I think, to a completely different level for what I was attempting to do at that position. So I was at the firm just shy of 5 years. And
Okay.
and this is going to probably make more sense to you than some of our listeners. When I left the firm, the number of pages of taxpayers that I had representation authority for on connected to my CAF unit, because if you order a FOIA, you do a FOIA request, they give you a CD and you have to print it out and you have to mark out. This was before the tax pro account, right? So before I left, we were starting that process to make sure that the taxpayers that I was not going to represent any longer were going to be I was going to have that withdrawal of my authority.
Mm-hmm.
We printed it. It was like over 4,500 pages front and back. It was an
Oh my
insane,
god.
an insane number of just different matters that I was helping with. I mean, it was so high volume. So I was a part of at least, I estimate probably 2,000 different taxpayers through
Mhm.
different channels of the representation process. A lot of them were like installment agreements, but we also did a lot of offers and compromise, and we did a lot of audits and whatnot. So I had a lot of exposure to a lot of that, both federal, and then California was the primary state that I was in. So I do have a lot of California experience. Um,
Yuck.
the 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 experience I got there was invaluable. So moving forward into, what my plan was after the firm. So I left the firm in 2019. It was near the end of 2019. And I did go to another CPA firm in an attempt to just get my feelers out there. They were
Mhm.
willing to, pay for the additional education if I wanted to pursue the CPA. It didn't work out at that firm. It was just before COVID hit. So when 2020 rolled around, I was pregnant. I had my daughter Bryn in May of 2020. So with all the stuff going on with COVID, like there was at that point no more firm life. Like it was just too uncertain. I have two little kids, and with all of that going on, I had no clue how I was going to work at a firm but
Mhm.
not have access to childcare because of all the stuff that was going on. So I was, I don't want to say forced into self-employment, but due to like what my circumstances was, it was either be a full-time stay-at-home mom, which no knock to anybody who does that. I had spent way too much time, money, and energy getting my career to where it was. And it was so important for me because I did a lot of that in my earlier days as a single mother, and it was so important for me to have a fallback plan because as much as I love my husband, if something happened, I'm the one who has to be able to make sure the kids are taken care of.
Mhm.
So I pushed myself into self-employment, and I had already had a small book of business that I was, working on the side, and I was able to really push that and then get into, again, just pursue the self-employment life, and got a website and got some systems set up and started doing different forms of advertising and, taking every speaking opportunity that would come my way just to get the exposure of like who I am and what I do and how I can help people. And even still, the enrolled agent credential, even though it's been really, really beneficial to my career, a lot of people still have difficulty understanding what I'm capable of doing for them. So I get a lot of referrals from other professionals more than I get like word of mouth referrals from like what I call people off the street.
Yeah, that's interesting and something that I try to encourage people to do, because I understand, and you probably run into this too, like, it can be frustrating to try to tell the average taxpayer, like, "I'm an enrolled agent," and they're like, "Well, what is that?"
Mhm.
I was like, you can either take that and be frustrated, or you open yourself up to a lot of speaking opportunities because once
Mhm.
the right people know, they put you in front of other people to tell them. But then also not burning those bridges. I heard you mention like the connections you made at the law firm and the mentorship.
Mhm.
Once you have those connections, like there are more than enough cases for me and you to work. So
Oh
you
yeah.
think of other people and refer those. The majority of my referrals come from CPAs
Yep.
because they don't handle that type of work. But I make sure to stay top of mind. Like, hey, I can help your client when they get in
Mhm.
trouble. Um, so that I appreciate you sharing that. And with the whole COVID experience, because I wouldn't say we were forced to go virtual, but I feel like our age group and generation was a bit ahead of the curve with COVID.
Mhm.
Because for me, business exploded because I was already doing Zoom. I was already using online portals and that type of
Mhm.
thing. For you, how big of an impact do you feel that being able to go virtual has been for your personal
Oh.
firm?
So So I lived in San Diego pretty much my entire life, and I moved out to the Boise, Idaho area in 2021. We waited until my daughter Bryn turned 1 before we moved, and we loved it here. We love it here. It's great. The funny part about going remote was the first things, 'cause I let my clients know I was going to be relocating, and they were already virtual. And the first thing
Mhm.
that a large majority said, well, can I still work with you? And I laughed about it because I'm like, we already don't meet in person. Like, what do you mean? Like, we're gonna still meet over the computer, over the cloud, over the internet. And it's been really nice. I'm not the kind of person who's like, oh, I can work wherever I want and I can go on vacation and I can work. No, no. If I'm on vacation, I'm not working. But I do
Right.
enjoy the ability to be able to have a virtual practice, because for me, having having a schedule that would require me to meet people, I'm a talker. I like, you know, back in school, they used to have to put me in the corner. I joke about at my old law firm, they had to put me in a glass box. I would talk to everybody. So I know that I wouldn't be able to stay within the constraints of like a traditional in-person firm. I mean, to stay efficient in that kind of environment, it would have to be, okay, come in at this scheduled time period. This is the time that we have allotted. This is what we're going to discuss. And I've been able to do that better in a virtual environment. I still do enjoy talking with my clients, and I've got buffers on the bulk of my appointments so we can go over time. But it is a little bit easier when we're all meeting virtually to know,
Mhm.
like, okay, we have this amount of time to discuss these things. We can prepare an agenda ahead of time. We can use some really cool technology to alleviate some of the things that would interfere with our efficiency, like automatic note takers, and being able to have a system like that send follow-up emails for us and like, hey, here's what we discussed. Those have been really, really helpful for me. Um, but being virtual has been great because I serve clients all over the world. I don't work with a lot of international clients per se, but I do have some US taxpayers who just happen to be living abroad. And
Mhm.
so we help to work with some of their US compliance and whatnot. But yeah, I'm able to serve people all over. And it's just a matter of doing the time conversions, which is really hard. The
It
time
is.
conversions are really hard. Like I have contacts in Arizona, which I think is the most difficult time conversion, because sometimes we are on the same time and other times we aren't, and I never know which one it is. So aside from the time conversions, I love the flexibility of being virtual. Absolutely love it.
So I do want to point out to you, again, just in case we have listeners that are new to the podcast, it's not just Jessica that can have clients all over the world. That's one of the perks, right, of
Hmm.
being an enrolled agent. It is a federal license, so you can represent taxpayers who are all over the world if they have a US tax problem. So that's one of those things, again, the authority that I don't think that a lot of people realize enrolled agents have. You're not just stuck in this one, confined to one area
Hmm.
where you live. So you brought up technology, you brought up automations. You guys, like I
Oh,
said,
I just snuck that in there, didn't I?
well, I was going to bring it up if you didn't. Um, Jessica, I have people ask me, one, like how can I do the things virtually that I need to do in person? Like I can't be online like you are because like my clients have to come and drop off their documents. I have to go over my clients' information with them. Um I need them to come drop off a check and I'm like, must be a like I will admit there are certain check amounts that I will go to my office to pick up.
Hmm.
But the average tax prep, absolutely not. So what advice would you give to a tax professional who feels like they can't do any of the work that they need, whether it be tax prep or representation, as far as like collecting payment, um, client documents, engagement letters? They can't do it virtually. They're confined to in person. What advice would you give them?
So the wonderful thing about technology is anything that you can do in person, you could do virtually. I still have regular meetings with my clients. We have similar face-to-face kind of interactions
Mhm.
over video conference, and we have if my clients are unable to scan their documents to my portal, so I do use TaxDome, which is a practice management tool. It has a lot of different functions there that allow me to do document sharing. Most of my clients have no problem uploading documents. If for some reason they're having some difficulty, maybe they don't have access to a scanner, or maybe the documents that they received were only in paper and they're just not, it might be too many pages. Great, you can mail it to my office, I'll scan it for you. But the ability to share documents in a secure virtual environment has been very, very beneficial. I have literally no paper in my office. I mean, I do have a stack that I have to shred just because the IRS loves to send paper letters, but I don't have a budget that I need to be concerned with for like office supplies because I'm doing everything wholly virtually. Um, every time I meet with the client to go over the paperwork, if I can't meet over a video conference, I use a tool called Loom, which lets me do screen recordings. And it's a very easy video share kind of program. And so I'm able to do tax return reviews via Loom. I give the option to my clients to choose if they want a video conference like this, where we do a screen share and we discuss like what questions they might have, or I use Loom and I just position the tax return into the viewpoint to keep all the confidential information out of it. So it's just numbers. And I go through all of the key points as if they were here with me. And we are able to leave off the conversation with if anything appears out of order, if you have some follow-up questions. Guess what? Here's my booking link. We can schedule a time to discuss this over the phone if if that needs to go that way. So I have a lot of clients that love virtual. It helps, especially with a lot of the individuals that I'm working with. They're business owners, they're parents, like to be able to have the opportunity to have the flexibility of like, oh my gosh, you can show up. You don't have to be on camera. You can be in your PJs with your hair a mess. Um, and you can still meet with me and there's going to be no judgment and we'll just go over the information that we have to go over, and then you can go back to your day. And I have lots of moms that I work with who a lot of times they've got little babies that they're holding during during our appointments and getting their questions answered, and they appreciate not having to like drag their kids into an office to get the support
Yeah.
that they need. So it's opened me up to a very wide variety of client types, and really the only people that I meet in person are my parents. And that's just because they live here. And, they, and then they still like, I make my mom and my in-laws like go through my practice management portal. And I'm like, you still have to schedule a meeting with me because you can't just be like, hey, I have a question about this. Um, but everything is I try to adopt a very not rigid, but like a flexible structure. I time
Mhm.
block. I use booking links, so I'm not going back and forth with people. Everything is somewhat strategic in how I've designed it, so that virtually there's not a lot of management on my end, and I'm able to just get the work done.
Which I think is the dream. People are like, "Oh, yeah, if I do go virtual, like, I don't have to do anything but the work." Um, so Jessica's being very humble here, you guys. She has not actually mentioned she does use TaxDome. She does
Hmm.
indeed. But like I said, I don't mind you sharing. I'm sure the listeners would be happy to hear you share as well. Jessica also, in her serial entrepreneurship, has a business to help tax professionals with getting these systems set up. And I believe it is specifically within TaxDome.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. So Jessica, will you speak to that, like what the business is and
Hmm.
how these systems help free you up so you can do the work and actually enjoy your clients?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of practice management systems out there. TaxDome
Mhm.
happened to be the one that I got into back in 2020. It worked for how I work. And around the time that I really started to get into that system, I was really learning more about automations and how not just tax practices, but but virtual type businesses in general were running. And I just kind of dove right into TaxDome. They had just started releasing some of their more entry-level automations when I became a user. And accountants, this is not their thing. This is not really my thing. It was a complete accident. I have no formal training on this. This was just like, I think I had a very hyper-focused day and I just like dove right into TaxDome and learned how to use that system in what I believe to be the most efficient manner, with the experience level of actually being a user, but also someone who understands like how automations and how workflows are developed, like the kind of that puzzle, right? Like I could lay out the puzzle and I could see what pieces have to go in between it to get the work completed.
Mhm.
And it was, again, total accident. I met my business partner, Jamie, in a random Facebook group of like 35,000 people. And, through a couple of different interactions, we decided that I wanted to try to bring her on board. And I said, hey, here's this TaxDome thing. Like I have people asking for my help because I just have an easy way I was able to make it work for me. And I'm like, you have a background in accounting and systems. Let's see what we can make out of this. And under no circumstances did we expect it to turn into what it is now. So we have grown an entire, it's a membership. It's work. You can visit us at workflows4taxpros.com. And we are, we're really trying to help tax practitioners take their TaxDome system to like the most efficient level that it can go. Automations, and I know automations sometimes can be very confusing to people, but a very simple automation would be your client sends you a document and that triggers an email to go to that client that says, thank you very much for giving me these documents. We're going to review them, and then you'll hear from us on what the next steps are. You have done two things. You have acknowledged your client for their work, which in turn is going to ideally prevent them from having to ask you, did you get what I sent you? Did you get what I sent you? Where am I in this process, right? We're proactively communicating with our clients, but we're not having to remember to send that email. That email is going out based on an action that took place within this practice management ecosystem. And that's a very simple example of some of the stuff that can be done in TaxDome. I mean, it handles everything. I have many aspects of my tax practice fully automated to the point where I don't even touch a tax return until I have a signed contract, a paid in full invoice, a completed organizer, and then documents received from the client. So all of those things happen in the background. My tax season doesn't really start until the middle of February. And the entire time I have clients going through that process to get me the information that I need from them. And then we take it from there. And even after that work is done, many other status updates and other similar triggers are all automated. So a carefully crafted practice management system like TaxDome, life-changing. You'll get hours back a week. Hours.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I don't think people realize when they're first starting out, well, like, "Why do I need an automated email to let people know I received their documents?" You don't realize how big of a deal that is until, like, you jump up to your 50 or 100 clients and everybody's like, "Hey, did you get what I sent you?" And you're like, "I
50
have
is the
to
jump off.
respond."
Yeah, 50 is the jump off. Once you have more than 50 clients, and this is a number that I have determined is the jumping point after working with almost 1,000 tax practitioners. When you have more than 50 clients, your brain cannot segregate more than that at any one time. So if you started your career recalling facts for every client that you had, and
Yeah.
then suddenly you are not recalling facts, it's not, your brain isn't any less sharp. You just have more information that you're holding in there now, and your brain can't go through, you know, 1,000. Oh, my AirPods gonna fall. Can't go through 1,000, 1,000 potential clients and recall every single fact like you did when you had that smaller book of clients. And
Mhm.
that was a turning point for a lot of tax practitioners. I used to do everything on a spreadsheet, and then I couldn't keep up with it and also get the work done efficiently.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I will make sure that the website for workflows for tax pros is in the show notes. And then we did also do an interview with Jamie on the YouTube channel,
Hmm.
Jamie and Jessica at the same time. So I'll make sure that's included as well. Again, thank you for being here with me for this episode. Before we leave, if you had to do this all over again with becoming an EA, starting your own firm, what would you do differently?
I definitely say from the outside looking in, if I didn't have that experience that I did at that other law firm, I would highly suggest trying to find a similar mentorship, a supervisor of some sort, which I know for some people they want to be self-employed, they don't want a boss, they just want to do their own thing. This work is so incredibly important to the people that you're doing it for.
Mhm.
You literally are in many cases going to change people's lives. I have many clients who've come to me at the very, very, very bottom of their life cycle, like just they're barely making it. And my help, I've been able to allow them to regain their life. And you have to know how to properly and effectively represent those people. So mentorship is going to be huge. You're going to hate having a supervisor because if you're a crap employee like I am, or you're insubordinate, like you're going to hate it. But I promise you, if you can just embrace it, get paid to learn if possible, that will be the biggest shift in your career because you need these tools and experiences to do this job correctly. Second to that, I I didn't wait too long for the systems when I first got into the solopreneurship, but I wish I would have gone through the process just a little bit sooner. And then I wish I would have hired a business coach earlier. I did hire a business coach probably midway. And the benefit for me once I hired a business coach was they allowed me to see things that I otherwise couldn't automate and delegate previously.
Mhm.
They understood how a business should run, and they could see where my deficiencies lied and allowed me to find ways to take those from like, oh, these are functioning very, very poorly, to like, oh, we're actually now running like a big boy business. Um, and I think that's super important. And I understand these things cost money. By all means, when you're starving for business, it's can be very hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I would say your best investments are mentorship and education, systems, and a business coach, even if it's short term, just someone who can come in and really point you, who has the experience and who has done this before to say, this is what successful business owners do. This is what it looks like to be a successful business owner and what you have to do to get there. I think those are probably the very, very important things. And had I done a couple of those things earlier in my career, I can't say how different it would be, but I know like where I'm going and what I'm working on now.
Mhm.
If I could have done this just even a couple of years sooner, I would be just that little bit more ahead of the curve.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So earlier when you mentioned working at the law firm and getting that training and that being a good experience, I was laughing on the inside, trying to hold it so you didn't think I was laughing at you because I always say that. I'm like, if you have the opportunity though,
Mhm.
no, seriously though, like there's something you want to do and you have the opportunity to work under somebody and get paid
Yes.
to learn and have like that guidance and protection, be on somebody else's insurance, like
Mhm. Yes, be on someone else's insurance.
take advantage of that
Mhm.
opportunity, like in all seriousness. And the business coach, I love that too, because sometimes when we work with fellow tax professionals, no knock to us, there are people in this industry though too who haven't had that type of mentorship or experience working in a bigger firm. And that's one of the things that I noticed is that I understand how certain systems should work and like what an office manager would do and certain
Mhm.
things in this process I shouldn't be doing. But that's because I had experience working in a bigger firm and seeing how that operated. So I didn't even think about the business coach. So thanks for that advice because I don't think I
Mhm.
actually say that. Again, Thank you so much for being here. I do want to share some of your information if you all would like to know what else Jessica has going on, learn more about workflows for tax pros, anything else Jessica has going on, even connecting on social media. She does have is it Jessica.tax?
Yep, Jessica.tax.
And that is scrolling across now. You can get it in the show notes. Jessica, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
Listeners,
having me.
you're welcome. Listeners, thank you for tuning in to episode 5. Don't forget to subscribe to this exclusive on Spotify podcast. You can give any feedback or comments down below, and I will see you all in the next episode. Bye now.
Bye.